Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Single Muslim Live here on British Muslim TV, sponsored by SingleMuslim.com. I'm Fahima Mohammed, your host and relationship coach. A very warm welcome from all of us here on British Muslim TV, wherever you're watching and streaming, whether it's on Sky Channel 752, Facebook or Twitter. We love to have you constantly supporting the show by watching, tuning in and sending in your comments and queries. And there's no difference for tonight. The numbers are remaining at the bottom of the screen for the rest of the episode. Please don't forget that you can call in directly into the studio to speak to myself or my guest to ask any questions, have any queries, even make your own comments and even telling us your own stories. We would love to hear that. And that number is 01924231083. Please do ask the bill payer's permission, as standard network rates do apply. You can also contact us anonymously and I can read out those questions or any queries that you want. And you can do that on our free WhatsApp service. And that number is 07585835150. I look forward to hearing from you tonight. But in the meantime, please help me welcome our wonderful guest tonight, Ali Ben-Hariz. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you very much for having me, Fahima. I'm excited to be on the show today.
I'm excited for you to be here. I'm really happy that you've joined us today. Really excited about the topic as well. What makes a man commit? The $1 million question. Let's see if you can answer that for us, especially the single ladies out there, and understand even a man's mind. It's going to be an interesting topic tonight. Now, before we go into that, please tell me a little bit about yourself for all our viewers.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Ali, and I am a men's self-improvement content creator. I create content predominantly on TikTok and YouTube, and my objective is to help men become better versions of themselves. And when I say better versions of themselves, I'm referring to absolutely everything in all aspects of life, in all realms. Ultimately, better men are better for society. More emotionally available men are better leaders. And ultimately, when you become a better version of yourself, you like yourself more, which is very important because a lot of men out there today dislike themselves. Their self-esteem is crushed, and that's because they don't work on themselves. They carry on feeling like victims, and I'm here to extend a helping hand, helping to guide them in the right direction. So for me, really creating content is something that I almost feel like I was called to do, because I was once that guy who had crippling self-esteem, low confidence. I didn't know a lot about relationships. I didn't know a lot about how to view life and how to conduct myself. And I almost wish I had almost like an older brother figure in my life that could guide me. Now, I don't claim to be perfect. I certainly do have my fair share of mistakes. And I'm fundamentally flawed as a human being. However, I believe I have learned a few things in my short time on this planet that could hopefully help a few people.
Well, definitely, I realized that even just by me coming across some of your content, it got me interested regardless with what you're saying, and that's why you're here tonight. So definitely, I love what you speak about, and I think we need more men to speak about how they can improve themselves. There's so much in society that is influenced, and as much as women have issues, they talk, they seek the help, they don't feel that it's a problem to be vulnerable, but we do see that a lot amongst men, and also where they feel safe to turn to speak to somebody, like you said, even if you had a brother figure or a role model. But a lot of families, even when they have their issues, unfortunately, it is in sometimes the culture or just the way it's seen that they shouldn't be showing their vulnerabilities or talking about, especially relationships. Even generally having men on the show before, and they talk generally about relationship issues and problems, they would never reach out to anyone, and they also find it very embarrassing that they're going to be judged if they are going to be speaking to another man about the fact that they have these relationship issues. Now, you coach a lot of men and you actually help them. Now, what does that look like, and what are some of the case studies that you've come across so far?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of guys reach out to me on Instagram and TikTok, and I can't obviously help everybody because I get loads of messages every single day. However, there's a common theme amongst a lot of the messages that I receive. A lot of guys feel alone. Despite having friends in their lives, despite having potentially several brothers as well in their lives, siblings, people that they are related to, they feel alone. They feel like they don't know what to do in their life when it comes to, relationships, when it comes to women, when it comes to their future, when it comes to, which avenue to go down in life, addictions. So there's many things that hold men back. Relationships is one of the most common sort of topics that I discuss with men. Men going through a tough time with their partner. They don't know how to overcome the challenges in their relationship. A lot of men are struggling with a breakup that they recently went through, and they don't know how to, sort of grieve from that and move forward. So I deal with a lot of cases, and, as I mentioned earlier, looking back at my younger self, I wish I had somebody to turn to speak to, because sometimes what you need is just to talk about it, just to get it off your chest, and to talk to somebody who has been through a similar situation to you. And sometimes just after talking, and this is why a lot of people feel better usually after visiting the doctor, even if the doctor hasn't prescribed any medicine, they just feel better having seen the doctor. It's just reassuring. And I feel like a lot of guys just need somebody to talk to. And it's unfortunate that a lot of men feel like they can't talk to another guy about their problems. I know there's a stigma associated with men opening up to women in the fear that the women may use their pains against them. And I certainly do believe that, not everything deserves complaining about. I mean, there is an aspect of be a man involved. However, there are situations where it's important to seek advice. And I believe that men should seek advice from competent men, other strong men in their lives, whether it's your jiu-jitsu coach, whether it's your imam at the mosque, whether it's an uncle that you have, an older brother, a long-term friend of yours. Give them a little nudge and be like, listen, man, I've got something I want to talk to you about. It's been weighing me down. If they're a good person, and you've known them for quite a lot of time, they'll sit down and listen to you, man, and offer you some advice. And you'd be surprised as well. Some people have some tremendous life experience, and learning from them will really help you in life. I mean, I've adopted the mindset of being extremely coachable. I never was always coachable. I mean, when I was younger, I was a lot more egotistical, and I thought I knew better when it came to life and speaking with people that are older than me. However, I've come to realize that it will serve you in the long run, because it's not just about what to do that you can learn from somebody, but it's also what not to do as well. You can learn from people's mistakes. Absolutely. I'm a big believer in that.
Absolutely. I love that you mentioned that. Also the fact that you did say when you were younger, you have more of the ego. And thing is, there are a lot of young men that do want to go and enter into relationships, and they don't know how. Obviously, the ones that have been in it, they have other issues, but at least they're willing to maybe sort it out. So, for example, we've taken different stages. So the first stage of being young and hopefully addressing these things early on is probably better for you, because you learn quicker and you make less mistakes, and you should learn from other people's mistakes, but a lot of the times we don't do that. We don't have the right role models around us as well, nor do we feel, sort of the way of committing and putting ourselves out there to turn to help. And maybe there's not even the help available that we see, because there's not very many men that do coach and even put themselves out to be talking about relationships. So what would you advise a young man that's looking for a relationship? I mean, what do they need to consider about themselves first? Because there's always this complaint about maybe women's expectations, and there's so much that they expect, and that's what holds them back, or they don't feel like, they are man enough, or nowadays in this society that you're too man enough, and that's even a problem because of the so many movements that are out there. So there's so many different avenues that we're looking, and a lot of women are very financially capable. Before, that was the one thing that a man could provide. Now a woman can provide a lot for herself. So what does the man actually put and bring to the table? These are the questions that some people are asking. So what is your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in addressing the man in the mirror. You got to look inwards before you look outwards. And a lot of guys will say things like, once the right woman comes into my life, then my life will be on track and my life will be sorted. But the way I see it is, are you the right man? First of all, are you emotionally mature? Are you stoic? Are you somebody who views life in a healthy manner? Have you come to terms with your masculine role? because a lot of men still, I mean, a lot of men think in a backwards manner. A lot of men aren't comfortable with leading. A lot of men want women to go, for example, 50-50 with them in a relationship. They want it a split right in the middle when it comes to what we do, our roles. And I don't see life this way. The way I see it is, before I go out there pointing the finger at women and making a list of demands, I need to first of all put myself in a good position as a man. First of all, if you're a young man, and when I say young man, I'm going to give an age range of between 18 to 25.
Yes.
If you're between the age of 18 to 25, in my opinion, I don't think you should be out there aggressively looking for a relationship. I think you should be looking to improve every aspect of your life. Put yourself in a good position, because ultimately what I believe is that you need to create a safe, comfortable environment for a woman to come into. And when I say safe and comfortable environment, I'm referring to you being an emotionally mature man, you having established your life's purpose, because a lot of men haven't figured out what their life's purpose is beyond, obviously, praying and
I
being
love what
a
you're
believer
saying,
in God.
Ali, and we are going to continue in a few moments, but we are coming onto our first break, but we've warmed up really nicely, and it's really amazing to hear what you're saying, and I can't wait to come back after the break. Please stay with us, as we will be talking more to Ali with regards to his insights. Stay with me, and inshallah, we will see you in a few moments. Take a short break, but please do join us, and we will be back. Salam. Assalamu alaikum, and welcome back to Single Muslim Live here on British Muslim TV, sponsored by SingleMuslim.com, having an amazing conversation with our coach, Ali. Now, as we were talking before the break, you were getting right into it before we had to end, but we want to continue. And I love the fact that you mentioned about how men of a certain age, especially when they're young, and of course you have that need for connection and wanting a relationship, and there is a desire, but there's so many things that you can distract yourself with in a healthy way and build yourself as a man, because that's what really entails you to continue to have a successful relationship if you strive at the very beginning. Now, what are the kind of things, because a lot of men, they may be working, they may be earning, but you did mention, I love the fact you mentioned martial arts before, and I think that's really, it's amazing. I mean, I did it myself years ago, and it's such a, it's not about fighting, it's not about combat, it's about discipline. It's about learning how to control yourself. People don't understand it. They just think, oh, it's about, being like sort of confrontational, even though that's what I am naturally. But at the same time, I think even, especially for men, if they need to, control their anger, desires, and needs, and also be disciplined, that is one way of actually having a really strong, healthy mindset alongside the self-development. A lot of people don't realize, men and women, that they need to have this self-development. What does that look like in your coaching sort of sessions when, someone comes to you, regardless of the issues? What kind of things would you take them through in order to understand them and where they're at, for them to go through a process?
Yeah. So what I always tell the men that I coach is that in life, you're either moving forwards or moving backwards. There's no such thing as staying the same. If you stop working out, your body's going to deteriorate. Your body's going to become worse, essentially. If you start eating whatever you want to eat, you're not going to look the same as you look right now. And so in life, you're either improving or you're getting worse. And so I always tell men that, look, life is a constant state of improvement. The man that you are today isn't the man that you should be in 90 days, in 6 months. You should be constantly looking to improve. And as I mentioned earlier, in every aspect of life, by the way, not just in your finances, not just in your physique, but also in the way that you conduct yourself in relationships, in the way that you communicate, for example. You can improve so many things. And, I always tell men to, embrace the journey. It's okay to suck in the beginning. It's okay to be bad. There's a saying, right? You have to be bad before you're good and good before you're great. Martial arts is something that humbles you, because especially jiu-jitsu as an example, many men who are large in stature and quite muscular may attend a jiu-jitsu class and realize very quickly that a guy half their size has choked them, and, and they have to tap out. It's a humbling experience.
Very. I love that. Yeah, it's like with Kung Fu as well, with all the major points that you need to know, and you can drop someone who is twice your size. Absolutely. When it comes to a man committing, though, even when they're young or even if they're older and they've got experience, women always find that very difficult to understand. Why do men find it very difficult to commit? Is it the fear of commitment? Is it the unrealistic expectations of what they know a relationship is? Or is it the other partner? They don't know how to choose. They're choosing wrongly. How do men even see relationships? Like, I really want to understand that.
I think it's a lot of things. I think it's a lot of things. I think unrealistic expectations is one thing. And I think that affects men and women because of social media. It creates this illusion that, you only marry once everything's perfect, but in reality, nothing will ever be perfect. Life is chaotic in nature. You'll never have everything in the exact way that you want it at the exact time. And so you'll never be ready. This is something that I tell men as well. As much as it's important to keep improving, being absolutely ready, it's not something that you will experience. You have to make the decision to be ready. It's an intention that you make. I remember speaking to a fellow who's older than me many years ago, and he told me, Ali, listen, right now you may not see a future with somebody because you haven't made the decision to get married. Right now you're just messing about. You're in the gray zone of, okay, this is a nice person. This is a nice person, but you haven't made the decision. You know what? I want to find myself a good woman. Now, look, a lot of guys are also afraid of being hurt. The fear of failure is a real thing in success when it comes to pursuing a career, but also in relationships. A lot of guys are afraid of getting to know somebody, everything working out nicely, and then later on in life, it breaks down. But I remember hearing something from a very successful and reputable personal development coach who passed away many, many years ago. He says, life is risky. Everything's risky about life. You could, get married and have kids and it doesn't work out. You could pursue a career that you thought would definitely take you to a whole new level in terms of success and it doesn't work out. I mean, life entails risk. And what I tell young men is to embrace the uncertainty. Yeah, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but I also pose a question to them as well. I also tell them, what if it works out better than you expected? Entertain that possibility. Because we always resort to the negative straight away. We always think, oh no, I'm definitely going to fail. And a lot of that stems from perhaps childhood, from seeing how your parents conducted themselves in their relationship, and you have that subconscious fear. Sometimes you don't even realize you have that fear. It manifests itself in the way that you conduct yourself in the relationship. You start self-sabotaging and you don't realize that. And it takes a very self-aware man to sit down and think, okay, you know what? I'm acting this way. There must be a reason. There must be a reason why I'm behaving this way or I'm showing up this way in my relationship. And very few men actually look inwards and acknowledge that. A lot of men just carry on living the way that they've been living, carrying on making the same mistakes and sabotaging further relationships. But there comes a point, gentlemen, and this is why I always say to them, is there comes a point where you have to pause and you have to be like, okay, it hasn't worked out for the last, or in the last 3-4 relationships that I've entertained. There must be a reason here. And so it takes somebody very self-aware to acknowledge that. And then from there, once you've acknowledged your shortcomings, recognize and start working on improving those shortcomings. No one's perfect. And I think going back to what you said about the unrealistic expectations, we look for somebody perfect, somebody who has no flaws, but everybody's messed up on the inside to a certain extent. Some of us carry more trauma than others. But I think if you get into the relationship and you identify that, okay, this person knows that they have problems and they're willing to work on them, that's good, because you can't be a hypocrite. You can't expect the woman to be absolutely perfect and, flawless, and for you to be somebody who carries a lot of trauma and baggage. So, as long as you find somebody who's willing to work on their problems, there's a beautiful saying from the same personal development coach, actually, which I briefly talked about a couple of minutes ago. He says, I will take care of me for you as long as you take care of you for me.
Wow.
You're not responsible for the other person. You're responsible for yourself. And as long as you take care of yourself and the other person takes care of themselves, then the relationship will be healthy. But I think a
That's
lot
a
of us
very
look for
different view
somebody to
to
fix that.
most people. That's a very different view because they always think that obviously the man has to be in control and responsible and put the other person first, which is I know what you're saying. And obviously, as a role, gender, there is that sense of responsibility and commitment and putting someone else first when you are in a relationship. But at the same time, you can't do that if you're not full yourself and whole yourself first. The other thing is, I do feel that maybe men don't commit a lot of the times is because they're not chasing a biological clock a lot of the times. Of course, I'm generalizing here because men do want to settle down. I'm not saying that they don't, but they actually can settle down at many ages and they can have children for as how old they can be. And they also are seen differently in society, whether it's in the Muslim community or even outside widely, that they can make many mistakes. They can go for many relationships. They hardly are judged as women are. And that could give them the advantage of not committing because they are actually brought up through double standards, especially in the Muslim community, where they can do no wrong. And if they do, that's what men and boys will grow up doing, and they're okay to do it. So I think a lot of that also plays a part. And women find it very difficult. Again, I'm generalizing that for a man to settle down and commit, and actually they can be together for years, seeing each other, or having some sort of relationship, but never getting to that committal point. So, what's your idea of a man that does that? And I know of so many stories, unfortunately, even in the Muslim community, where they've known each other for years, and there's no commitment. Do you think that's partly also the woman's fault for allowing it and tolerating it, as well as the man knowing that he can commit? And sometimes they can be in a relationship for so long, haram or not, but they find somebody else and they can settle and commit to that person. Why does that happen?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the way I see it is it's something you have to make clear very early on when you get to know somebody. You have to be ruthlessly prioritizing your future,
Yes.
and I think a lot of people, for the sake of being in love, because in the early stages they call it limerence, the stage where you're just so infatuated by somebody and they can do no wrong, and you've painted a picture of them as a Disney princess or as a Disney prince, and it just feels so magical. But people don't think long term, and I think they're afraid of conflict as well. That's another thing. Maybe the woman is afraid of bringing up the relationship, the commitment aspect of things, because she's afraid the guy will be like, no, I'm not ready, forget about it. But that builds resentment later on. The more you bottle that question in, the more you bottle your true feelings. I mean, there's a saying, problems delayed or conversations delayed are conversations magnified, or to that extent. So essentially, if you don't talk about it early on, it will come back to bite you. That resentment will build up. And it's the same for people, for example, who don't tell their partner that they don't want kids, as an example. And their partner initially overlooks it and shrugs it off and says, she'll come to change her mind later on. But maybe she doesn't. Maybe she genuinely doesn't want kids. And what will end up happening 2-3 years later is that will be the result of the end of the relationship, because you didn't make it clear early on that this is important to you. So I think that for men and women, they must have non-negotiables going into a relationship. And I think when you're young, you're led by limerence. But as you get older, you start thinking more practically, or at least you should. And, going back to what you were saying earlier about, is it financial? I think for a lot of guys, and I can speak from my personal experiences, there's a lot that a man has to think about before he can move ahead with the decision. Because it's not just a fairy tale, it's reality. You have to speak to her father, and you have to tell him that you will take care of his daughter for the rest of your life. It's a big thing, and it's not a reason to crumble and to decide not to move ahead.
You mentioned something really important, which I'm going to stop you because we are going into a break. But you mentioned about talking to the father, which doesn't even happen at the very beginning because people are quite scared. But we're going to come back on that. Very, very important point, actually. Like you said, the non-negotiables. Very interesting so far. Again, please do stay with me. We will be back after this very short break and continue our conversation. Interesting so much so that you need to stay tuned and keep watching. And inshallah, we'll see you in a few moments. Take care. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Single Muslim Live here on British Muslim TV, sponsored by SingleMuslim.com. I love what you said before the end of the break there, Ali, with regards to the non-negotiables and setting boundaries early on so that you will understand if your potential partner, especially the male, is actually ready for commitment. And I know a lot of females do hold back. They can communicate, but they may not communicate what is really uncomfortable and necessary at the beginning, because they are afraid that that relationship may not get off the ground. But actually, if it doesn't, you rather find out at the very beginning, is what I always usually say. And you get to know, because they think that let's just warm up and get to know each other. But if you set those things from the very beginning, then you don't waste each other's times. And a lot of women are also scared to say, you know, I want a commitment. And you do need to speak to someone who is like a family member, whether it's a guardian, father, even if you don't want to get that serious to begin with, but to know that that person is serious, speaking and knowing that the family member knows, whether it's a sister, uncle, cousin, or whatever. So it's a little bit less sort of like, you know, hesitant for the other side. But at least you know that if they are willing to say, okay, I know that my family member knows about you, that they will say, okay, I need to back off because she's getting serious, or you know what, she's serious, I'm serious, it doesn't matter. But a lot of people don't do that. And I'm going to say this because I'm a woman, that women need to take responsibility as well. Even if a man's coming to you in whichever way they can, you can figure this out by having those uncomfortable conversations. Communication is not just saying what you want for this lovely dinner and to be taken out and how the future is. It's about here and now, more importantly, which does understand where does that person lie in their mind, even if they're not completely ready, but at least you're going and moving in the right direction. So I think that communication is important, and setting those boundaries as to what you want and to communicate that, to say it out loud to the other person. And you'll know straight away by their reactions whether or not you're getting what you want, and if they are on the same page and in alignment. Now, there's also a lot of, you know, the low self-esteem between, you know, for men especially. You think that they can come across confident, or they have the banter and they can joke around, and maybe that's also hides the fact that they do actually lack that confidence and self-esteem to speak about certain things, or say, like, you know what, I'm not ready for commitment only because I'm not ready financially, or I don't have that house yet, or I don't have that job which is, you know, giving me what I need in security. So how am I going to secure myself in a relationship? Because that's fundamentally what it entails. As much as you need to be responsible for yourself, you are taking on a responsibility of another person. So how does a man build that sort of esteem with themselves in order to even not be in the best position, but own it and work towards it with their partner? Because it doesn't have to be you being perfect as well. Partners can grow together as long as they are in alignment with what they see and they have that growth mindset. So what's your tips about, you know, building self-esteem for men?
Yeah, the way I see self-esteem is ultimately self-confidence is tied to competence. The better you become at whatever you're doing, the more confident you will be. And because you need to create actual proof. You need to prove to yourself that you are progressing. That's how you build confidence. If you've never been to the gym before, you're obviously going to be low on confidence. But after going for a year, you've got that 1 year's worth of proof that, you know what, I can actually commit to this gym thing and I can improve myself. Same thing with finances.
Do men have jealousy over each other? Because I know women definitely do. We look at each other and you compare. Do men do the same?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. I mean, you look at a guy doing better than you and you're like, wow, you know, it must be amazing. You know, there are guys that are jealous. And I think jealousy stems from insecurity, ultimately. What I encourage men to do is seek inspiration, but don't hate on another man, because hatred won't bring you anything. There's a beautiful saying, success is looking for a good place to stay, because I believe that success is something you attract by the person that you are. And so if you're a person full of resentment and hatred and jealousy, you won't attract success. But if you're somebody who wishes others well and you're like, wow, this guy, he's doing tremendously well for himself. You know, he's taken care of his family, very honorable. You know what? He's married, and he's married young, and he's been able to do that. Amazing. You know, because that could be you in the very near future as well. And you wouldn't like it if somebody was like, oh, look at him, he must have done that through hurting other people. Or, you know, people obviously will assume things about you, but you know, if there's somebody that has done tremendously well, you know, applaud that individual. You know, there's enough to go around for everybody. There's enough money out there. There is a partner out there for you. Yeah, I know sometimes it may feel like there's nobody out there in the world, but there are plenty of possible suitable people for you. And so, as long as you're improving as a man and you're taking care of yourself, and as I mentioned, with self-confidence, that comes through actually doing things successfully over a period of time. And so if you're not confident right now, start to build that confidence by engaging in the repetitions. Go to the gym, for example, improve in your work, start making more money. Because when you start making more money, you feel more confident in your ability to provide for a woman. And I'm a big believer in the man paying for everything. I don't believe in the 50-50 stuff. You go halves on the rent, cancels. I don't believe in that stuff. Yeah, I know some people do it for temporary situations, and I completely sympathize with them. However, Islamically, as a man, I believe that you take care entirely of your woman. That's the example that I saw from my dad growing up. And my dad went through some tough periods as well. I didn't come from a wealthy background, but I always saw how my dad would do absolutely everything he can to make my mum's life very easy. And, my dad went through some circumstances that were very difficult financially, but my mum almost never felt it because my dad will do absolutely everything he can. He'd work extra jobs just to make sure that
pressure.
Yeah, exactly. Take the pressure. Because I truly believe that, you don't want to create an environment that's very chaotic and you're worried about money, and especially early on. And this is why I tell men between the ages of 18 to 25, get yourself in a relatively stable financial situation. You don't have to be a millionaire to get married, but at least identify what you want to do in your career and start to improve at it a little bit. Once you have a general idea of where you're heading and you're starting to make more money month in, month out, then you can start thinking to yourself, you know what, I could take care of a woman. If I get married, I could afford to pay for the rent for the apartment. I could afford to pay for the food. Because if you're not at a point where you can pay for rent or for food, then I would say improve yourself a little bit more, and then you can entertain that possibility in the very, distant future. But not when you're financially broke, let's just say. I think it'll create a lot.
When you're struggling, it's very difficult to make that commitment. And obviously things can go up and down, but as you get older, you'll be able to handle it better. But when you're younger, absolutely work towards yourself physically, mentally, financially, and emotionally will come with that. When you actually work on the other areas, it will come with it. The other thing is, though, aside from everything that we've said so far, if we get a guy who is actually quite successful financially, obviously going and looking after them physique, and they have a lot of suitors and they have a lot of choices. Now, when you come to that sort of man who is, got it together, again, they might still struggle to commit because now they've got the attention. So what's that sort of man that will take, his mindset to being committed to one and sticking to it, even if they've got all the options and all the people coming to them, the DMs or whatever, because now everyone's on social media. It's not like as if, you have to be a superstar. Everyone's putting themselves out there. Before it was like, a huge phobia of public speaking. Now I think that's probably going to be changed because everyone is speaking. Everyone's talking. Everyone's putting themselves out. Even the people that wouldn't normally, they've got videos, they've got ideas, they share in their comments, whatever it may be. So there's a lot more accessibility, especially if you are confident and you're looking good and you're going to the gym and you can see it, right? These men, what makes them settle to that one person and make them committed, even if they've got the whole package and they've got all the options out there? What type of woman, or is it them? Is it the women that makes them commit, or is it them?
Well, I think that with very successful guys, they know that there's plenty of beautiful women when it comes to looks. There's certainly many beautiful women in all kinds of all parts of the country and all around the world. However, what makes highly successful men commit is finding a woman that respects them. I think respect is an important thing. A woman who, wants to build with him even more. A woman that wants to create a family with him, because there's a certain sweetness from building a family that you don't get from just entertaining any woman. I'm somebody who talks against hookup culture, obviously, not just for religious reasons, but I just believe that if you're a man who's successful and you start engaging in hookup culture, it could be the reason for your downfall.
Yes.
Because it takes focus to sustain your success as well. And I think a lot of men, if they were to get married, their success would become even higher. It'd elevate even further because the right woman will bring more out of you. And I think knowing, for example, that you have a daughter at home waiting for you. Let's say you get married to a woman and you've got kids. I mean, it gives you more of a reason to work harder now as well,
Yes,
because
the
you want to take
motivation.
care of
Yeah.
people. Yeah, men want to feel useful. And so
Mm-hmm.
when you find a woman that you truly care about and she respects you and she makes your life better, I think for a lot of guys, their fear is, I'm successful, I'm doing well for myself. I don't want to come home to an environment where I'm not appreciated,
Yeah.
where it's chaotic. But if they come home to an environment where the woman is respectful, makes the house a home, she's a joy to be around. Of course, relationships aren't always going to be lovey-dovey and rainbows and sunshine. However, if he feels like, I can't wait to come back home to see my wife, I think he knows that he's found a good woman. But if it's just about looks, there's plenty of good looking women out there, but they don't have that extra sort of that extra sort of how can I put it? That's what men are looking for is a woman that completes them, a woman that can provide that sort of,
Help them grow, support, teamwork, all of these things. Do you
yeah.
think successful men would appreciate a strong, independent woman as well? Or do you think that makes a difference to a man committing to those sort of women, because they are ever increasing today?
Yeah, if I'm honest with you, I think a lot of women who are successful tend to lead with their accomplishments, but a lot of them forget that men don't look for that, because we know that your success is yours. Your money is your money. Even Islamically, once you, as a man, you get married to a woman, her money's hers. And so it's not a reason for a guy to be like, wow, well, she's got a PhD and she's got $1 million in the bank, let me get married to her. Obviously, for some guys, that might be a reason as to why they're interested in her. But for most men, they acknowledge that, okay, I've got my own thing and I need to prove myself. You've got your thing, which is tremendous, but what are you like as a human being? The qualities that we look for is, are you able to make a house a home? Are you respectful? Are you feminine? And when I say feminine, I'm not referring to, like, I don't want women to get offended by that and think, well, what do you mean they expect us to be feminine? Because, women like a masculine man, and it's not a
Yes.
switch, by the way, that you
Yes.
turn on and off. You're either masculine or you're not. And it's the same thing with being a woman. I mean, I've heard things before where women have said things along the lines of, well, I'll be feminine for the
Well,
right
you
man.
know what? Honestly, Ali, again, you've always, before the break, given me so much information, but unfortunately, we're going to cut off, go into a break, and we will come back and pick up from where we left off, because I think that's very interesting what you said, and you've touched on another topic, which we definitely need more clarity and clarification on what we mean when we talk about what men want and how they commit and what they're looking for in a woman. So please do stay tuned, and inshallah, we will be back in a few moments. Look forward to seeing you then. Take care. Salam. Assalamu alaikum, and welcome back to the final part of this episode, which has gone so quickly. And if you just tuned in, please do rewind, take notes. It's really interesting. I'm so overwhelmed with the information so far and trying to get into a man's mind so that we can understand what makes them commit. Is it from their end or is it from a woman, as we've discussed so far? I think it takes both. And obviously, at the end of the day, it's important that we build ourselves as humans individually, and then we can, connect with somebody else. And sometimes it doesn't work in that order, but you really need to do that in order to have that self-awareness so that you can bring yourself to the table and bring something with it, not just expecting something from the other. That's the main thing. And it's not just finance. It comes with emotional intelligence. It comes with awareness of self. And then you can also understand the other person. We've discussed about commitment and, having these uncomfortable conversations at the very beginning, knowing what is it that you want, what you like, knowing your non-negotiables in a relationship and bringing that forward so you don't waste time. And for a man, if you're starting off very young, try and build yourself as you get older and you are that successful, high value man, and you might have all these options. You also need to be very disciplined and controlled and focused for your success to continue, so that even if you have plenty of options out there, you are going to be committed to the one. But also it takes a woman to be also in a very special way, even if she's successful and independent, to know what a man truly wants. Especially, there are gender roles. There are certain things that happens where a man will do certain things and a woman will do certain things. And I know in today's society, especially in the Western world, it's this kind of conversations that no one's having, and they're afraid to speak the truth. because they just want to conform to what society is saying, which is actually damaging the family unit and the home. So that's why we have these conversations, and it's really enlightening to speak to Ali tonight. He's given us so much food for thought, and we haven't finished with you yet. So the other part I really want to touch on as well is, men and intimacy. And it's not just the physical intimacy, it's the loneliness that men feel, even if they're in a partnership or they're not in one and they're looking for that. And you might even get the physical intimacy, but what keeps a person actually fulfilled is the emotional intimacy, and the side of knowing that someone's there to support you, understand you, and be there for you. And obviously it's both sides. Now, do men only just look at the outward appearance and think about the physicality, and also only about physical intimacy, and they're quite happy they get those things, and they've got a happy home, a wife there that's there for them all the time when they come home, and that's what makes a man commit? Or is there other aspects that you come across in your coaching that there is a lack of certain things that I've just mentioned, and maybe we need to be aware of it as men and as women?
Yeah, if I'm honest with you, the conversations that I have with my male friends, we all, I mean, I like to surround myself with people that have a healthy outlook on life and relationships. And, speaking of myself, for example, I don't have a list of 1,000 things that a woman must be if I am to commit to her. I'm a very realistic person. Of course, looks matter to an extent. But for me, as long as she's respectful, she has a great relationship with her family, or at least she's trying to improve that relationship. That's good to see. And then beyond that, obviously religion is important, and does she pray and things like that. I mean, that's something that I look for, or at least is she trying to improve that relationship with God as well. Beyond that, if I'm honest with you, everything else, I mean, what she's interested to watch on TV, or, her hobbies, does she like knitting, poetry? I'm just mentioning some stereotypical things here. Of course, there's thousands of things that women could be interested in, but beyond that, I mean, that's fantastic to see. And I think differences are healthy in that regards. But
sorry, do men actually choose, to commit with someone who they see a potential mother? Is that true? Or do they actually commit to somebody, or don't commit most of the time, when they just want to have fun, and that's when that actually it's just the looks? Does that actually come into any sort of scenario?
that's certainly something men think about. I mean, I've spoken to guys before that have told me, you know what, I've married her because I could see her being the mother of my kids. There's a difference right there. And I think it's up to the woman, of course, that you interact with as a guy, to make it clear to you that I'm only looking for marriage. And I think guys respect that as well, by the way. It may annoy them in the moment if they're looking for something casual. However, I think there's a deep level of respect that is attained, and it's nice to see. It's nice to see. And I think women also appreciate it when a guy says, hey, I'm not here to play games, I want to get married. I think that's refreshing, and that's becoming almost rare nowadays, especially from a highly successful young man who has a lot going for him. So ultimately, going back to your question about, what else that makes a man commit, I think as long as she's a woman who's respectful, she's a woman that is constantly improving herself, recognizes that she has flaws, then I think for most men, really, that's enough. I mean, peace is important for us. Life is chaotic as it is. As a man, you're out there, you're making a lot of money. I mean, you're going out there trying to make a lot of money for the family. You're dealing with stresses in different angles. So I think coming back home, and look, women also have their issues as well. I mean, life isn't exactly lovely for every woman out there. Women go through struggles, of course, but I think as long as you're both putting effort into making the relationship better, and the environment at home is healthy, you're laughing a lot, you're tickling each other, you're watching movies, and when you have arguments, you argue in a healthy way. Conflict resolution, key thing.
Yes.
I think that's one of the biggest reasons why people don't commit. I think they realize, wow, we really don't meet eye to eye, and when we argue, it's very nasty. And I think if you find somebody that's willing to compromise, and I'm not saying you throw away all of your core values, absolutely not. But, when it comes to the day-to-day troubles, if you're willing to respectfully sit each other down and be like, you know what, I acted out of order, it was my mistake. I think if you have that healthy conversation after every argument, and you don't go to sleep angry at each other, then you will have a very healthy long-term relationship. I mean, this is something that I spoke to an old couple about, actually. I think it was about a year ago. I mean, I just love speaking to older couples because it's such a rare
Yes,
sight, and it's so
absolutely.
nice to
Yeah,
see. So I asked them out of
definitely.
curiosity, what's the secret? And and the man told me, we never go to sleep angry at each other, and that stuck with me. That's the conflict resolution, very important thing.
Absolutely. And on, to add to that as well, is to not give up on each other. Because like you said, we all struggle through different stages. And as even though when we want to support each other and build ourselves and one's high flying, the other one may not be there. So you don't let that person go just because they're feeling down as much as they need to be there, for you. Especially when it's a long-term relationship, when kids get involved and women go through different things and men go through their own things as well, whether it's their job or some midlife crisis and they're not feeling great. And you might think, oh, what am I dealing with? But, it can take 6 months or a year or more for you to get back on track. And you need that person to be understanding, supportive, and not give up. Unless obviously for extreme circumstances, that's another issue. But generally, I think now it's people are tolerating less. And I mean that in a sense that they are not looking at things from a different angle and perspective in order to see that there is still good in that striving and struggling and adversity, because that's what life's about. And even more so in a relationship where you're going to be tested constantly. Now, we don't have that much long to the show, and I don't want to wait till the end. And I love your work, and I really appreciate you coming on tonight. But more importantly, anyone that's watching, I really do urge them to reach you so that they can actually get some of these kind of coaching and also your upcoming stuff that you're coming across with your project. So please share, your work. Where can people see you and come to you for further advice? Because I know this is just the icing on the cake, what you've just done, and I know you work a lot more deeper than that. So where can people find you, Ali?
Yeah, so I create content predominantly on YouTube and TikTok. So on YouTube, it's just my name, Ali Ben-Hariz. I don't think there's another one of me out there, but who knows? On TikTok, same thing as well. Just search my name, Ali Ben-Hariz. If you want to book a coaching call with me, or you're interested in more of what I do, my website is alibenhariz.com. So you can check me out on there. So those are my main platforms.
Perfect, perfect. No, I love that. I think it's a really important and vital to have people like yourself in the community. I know you help everyone, but especially in the community, we don't have much of this kind of insight and assistance for men of all stages, especially young ones who are struggling, regardless of their upbringing. And do you think that plays a part? Because I know we talk about trauma a lot, we talk about families, but at the same time, when you come to a certain age and phase, you can unpeel the onion and start again if you do have new information. So we can't just always blame what's gone wrong, because there has to be hope even for bad upbringings, coming from a divorced family and parents and like, things like. So, at the end of the day, we need to understand that there is still hope. So do you think that even without a grounding from the beginning, that you can still change your outlook and be successful in future relationships, even if you don't have one at home?
Yeah, I mean, I consider myself a professional optimist. The way I see it is you can go through hell in life. I mean, you can go through some extremely difficult circumstances and still live a remarkable life.
Definitely.
What I tell men to do is learn from the past, but don't live there. If you had a
Yes.
rough childhood, ensure that your kids will live a much better childhood than the childhood that you went through. Learn from it. And look, you'll become a better father as a result. And also forgive your parents as well, because they operated on the limited information that they had at the time. Maybe your parents, their parents passed away early. Maybe they didn't have that conversation with them. I mean, there are so many factors, and you just got to remember that your parents were once 25, 23 and young and immature. And maybe they argued a lot when they were, in their first few years of marriage. So forgive them, and ensure that going forward, you will do things differently. If you weren't happy with the way you were raised, do things differently. That's how I see it.
Absolutely. No, I love that. I think that's so much, hope and optimism. It's really important, actually. And I love that. And what a way to end with that optimistic thought, because I'm exactly the same. I just want to thank you again, Ali, for being with us tonight, giving us your time. I know how busy you are. We've been planning this for months, but we're finally here. And it's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you so much from all of us here on British Muslim TV.
Thank you very much, Fahima. It was a pleasure being on here today.
Honestly, I love everything you say. Please give Ali Ben-Hariz a a quick sort of like follow when it comes to his TikTok and YouTube, and search him on his website as well. I just want to also thank everyone that's watching. We have these shows and we have these amazing guests and these topics because there are definitely issues around the household. There's definitely challenges in the society and the environments, and especially in the Western world that we're living in. We have so many messages coming across to us. So inshallah, we're trying to give you those realistic messages in line with our faith and in line with the way in which we need to live. And even with all the troubles and challenges, that you can overcome this and inshallah have amazing households. I look forward to seeing you same time next week. Another topic, another guest. Please do stay tuned. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching. And I really do appreciate all of your commitment to the show by always supporting us and watching us. And I hope to see you next week. Same time, same place. Have a lovely evening. Send in any of your questions, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Take care. Assalamu alaikum. Have a good night.